Hello, everybody. I'm Diane Hessan, President and CEO of Communispace, and it is a pleasure to be presenting for NewMR. There are so many articles and blog posts about the use of online communities these days for market research, and the question I get asked most often is about critical success factors. Although insight communities, or as some people call them, MROCs, are very hot right now, Communispace has been building and managing these communities for a decade. We've created more than 400 communities during that time for about 100 major brands, and thus we have probably made more mistakes than anyone in the world. And so today I'd like to share with you some of the biggest myths that we hear about communities. Now, these are obviously from my personal perspective and also based on a rather massive database we have of best practices. In addition, we spend about $1 million US on our own research, just observing what's going on in communities, experimenting with various strategies, and trying to optimize how they work. So here are the 8 myths that I hear the most. Myth number 1 is that a community is just a fancy name for a panel. So actually, although communities and panels are both great ways to leverage the internet to get access to consumers, they're actually quite different. So a panel tends to be a large group of consumers that a brand would access about once or twice a month, usually with a survey. If you have a panel, the members don't typically know each other or interact with each other. Now, in a community, in contrast, you essentially have 3 channels of communication. As you see over here on the right-hand side, similar to a panel, you have an opportunity in a community for the client company to ask questions of the members. This could be through a survey, such as one created using Confirm It, one of the sponsors of the NewMR conference, or it might be through any number of other methods. It might be a bulletin board, a chat, a brainstorming session, a request for members to send in photos or videos, or more creative projects such as mystery shopping or keeping journals. So that's one channel of communication in a community. On the left-hand side, the second channel is that in the community, members have an opportunity to send unsolicited advice to the client, or what we like to call the answers we forgot to ask. And then in the third channel on the bottom, which is the one that most of us research geeks love the most, the members of a community initiate conversations with each other. And what you can basically do is to listen in, often hearing a lot about their lives, their dreams, their frustrations, their values, and more. In other words, a community is a virtual room filled with consumers that is on, live, continuously. And obviously people are not online all the time, but over time as they come in, the members build relationships with each other, and in a great situation, trust increases and the quality of the conversation increases over time as well. In our communities, just to give you some context, the members tend to engage in 2 projects every week that are generated by a client, but they tend to initiate just as many conversations with each other. So that's kind of the difference, the real nature of member-to-member, customer-to-customer conversation in a community and the benefits of that. Myth number 2. Myth number 2 is that you can use a community for just about anything. I hear this so often from people, just think the consumers are right there in the room, and so just ask them anything and move forward. And of course, this is not the case. Now, clearly, you can use a community on that fuzzy front end to test hypotheses, but there are common uses on this next slide also. So this is just an inventory of what we find our clients are using communities for. You can see here concept tests, lots of work on new product and service development, testing hypotheses, getting day-to-day feedback. Some of our very best insights from communities have come from longitudinal projects where we follow consumers over a period of time, whether it's a week or a month or even a year. And so the true benefits are from the notion that the community, it would be available to you continuously. Now, on the other hand, you would not use a community for the items on this next list. You wouldn't use it to make a major expensive decision, to do validation of tremendous importance, to do a segmentation study, or the like. Now, we'll talk a bit later about bias, but obviously you wouldn't use a community for ad tracking because if the community's been involved in creating the ad, for instance, you will be sure that they are looking at it. So that's myth number 2. Myth number 3 is the most counterintuitive one, but having done this for 10 years, I would pick it as my favorite, the real breakthrough myth. So there are lots of different types of communities on the web, and for many of these, the success metric is how many registered members do you have? You hear it, we have 1 trillion registered members. However, if the purpose of your community is market research, it doesn't matter if you have a zillion members if they don't participate, share, respond, and open up their lives. So participation or engagement is the key metric. You need to ask how many people are actually participating. If we have a quick question, we need an overnight response. How many people can we get? Now, in a typical large public site, you get about 1% participation, very small, as you can see on the bottom left of this chart. I'm sorry, on the bottom right hand side of the chart. On the other hand, if the community is smaller, you can actually get surprisingly high participation. So much so that a 400-person private community, small, gets you just as much participation as a 350,000-person public community. So we've done community of all sizes, and the optimum in our experience is 300 to 500 members, because after that, participation rates tend to drop fairly dramatically unless you just need the answers to a simple poll. Going under 300 just doesn't give you enough critical mass. So in essence, the holy grail of a really vibrant online research community is intimacy. A smaller group participates more, builds relationships, works harder, and even tends to be more honest. Myth number 4. This is probably the least surprising to most of you because it tends to apply to most online research. There is an endless list of companies out there who have built communities with great technology, but where no one ever contributes much. We tend to call these dead communities. And the lesson is that you shouldn't be enamored by just the idea of a shiny new tool. This reminds me of some research done by market researcher Bernie Malinoff about how some 20th century old-looking online survey tools actually increase participation more than those new sexy ones. It doesn't mean technology is not important. You need a rich feature set for a variety of activities. You need a robust member profiling capability so that you can run crosstabs and truly understand community members. But the key is about engagement and how you circle back and report, and less on whether you have a cool tool. Myth number 5, communities are just for brand fans. Not true. In fact, a great use of the community is to understand the customers who only use your product or service occasionally, or even not at all. Now, of course, if your goal is deep understanding of your heavy users, then you do want fans. However, you can recruit for many other types of objectives. So the other version of this myth is that people will often speculate that communities will only work if you have a high involvement product, like an airline. Now, for us, this isn't the case at all. You can have a very vibrant community focused on toothpaste and deodorant if you design it in a way that the members can bond with each other. So just to take a look at this pie chart, this pie chart shows the breakdown right now of our clients, and you can see by industry that communities can work for all kinds of products: high involvement, low involvement, B2C, B2B, and all demographic groups from, certainly teens all the way through to grandparents. Now, the dynamics of how different consumers engage are important to know, but it's not necessarily a limitation. Just to give you a very general example of a dynamic, what we found is that when women are having conversation in our communities, you can give them bulletin boards and they tend to initiate and engage in conversation. With men, if you're trying to get insight, very often they want to solve the problem right away. So maybe you start with a survey, but at the end of the survey you put an open-ended question that says, what did you think? And at that point they tend to open up just as much as the women did with a different methodology, sometimes even more. Myth number 6, community members are biased. You would think that this is true. I mean, after all, you would think that they're positively biased. So after all, you have a relationship with these people. You know, over time, wouldn't it make sense that they love you and they will be excited about and voting positively for anything that you do? Our research team has done multiple studies in this area, and they have actually found that over time, community members tend to be slightly more critical, not positively biased. So why is that? In essence, the relationship that community members have with you increases their desire to tell you the truth. Thus, if they don't like something, they are more likely to tell you that and to tell you why. Just like a friend who doesn't like your haircut being more likely to tell you that than someone you don't know well. So rather than sharing statistics now, if you love this kind of research, you can pull it off the Community Space website at no charge. We won't ask you for your name in order to do that. So that's number 6. Number 7, the more you pay members, the higher your response rate. Wrong. So there's lots of debate out there about incentives. Let me give some context here. In our communities, the average member is asked to engage in some sort of research activity about 8 to 10 times each month. So an activity might be a survey, it might be a discussion, it might be a special project where we're asking them to take a photograph of their medicine cabinet or the like. And our average community member gets in return a gift certificate of about $10 US each month if they meet the required participation criteria. So they need to be doing more than reading or clicking on a poll. However, when we have tested paying more than that $10 to members, participation actually doesn't go up. The other thing we found that although these sorts of member appreciation gifts are very helpful as part of how we position the benefits of the community when we recruit members, over time incentives tend to be the number 3 reason why people participate. The number 1 reason is that people absolutely love having a voice and being able to see the impact of their opinions. And the number 2 is that if you set up this, what we call the social glue, the right way, in the community, they tend to bond with each other, and therefore it increases the likelihood that they're going to come in and participate. Let's go to the last one, number 8. And the final myth is people say that it's hard and sometimes impossible to measure ROI from communities. Actually, the good news is that it's quite the contrary. In fact, if you build a really vibrant community, you can actually get your dream ROI, or what I tend to call the triple threat of better, faster, and cheaper. So here's a chart just of some of the measures that our clients are using. Reduce cost, which I have in large letters there, essentially means that what you're doing is you are comparing what you're investing in a community to what it would cost you if you ended up having to do all of that research and you didn't have the community. And so it's literally an arithmetic exercise. Most of the time when people add that up, they're getting a payback of at least 3 times and very often more. The second one is speed, and speed is very measurable, both as speed of response, how quickly can we get information, can we get it overnight, and speed can also be expressed in more strategic terms, such as speed of innovation. How long does it usually take us to get a product to market? How long does it take us to get a product to market if we have the community? And then lastly, there are all kinds of quality measures, from whether you are generating actionable insights, to whether you have avoided disasters, to whether you have optimized your marketing effectiveness. So that's it for now. 8 myths. Communities can be extremely valuable to people, obviously, if they're not used in the right way. What you're getting is not going to be as helpful to an organization. So if I've gone too quickly, or if you have any other questions, I'm happy to respond to them at this point.